Thanks for taking a minute to hear this presentation about what may be the next step that God is calling us to do as a congregation here at Trinity. First of all, I want to take a minute to remind you about God's vision for us as a church, that we would be a place where more and more people are receiving God's grace and responding by living grace-filled lives, that we would love people to Christ, that we would be a place where that happens in relationships. God designed us to love one another, and that doesn't happen by accident in our world today. We live such busy, fractured lives, and so the ability to be in a small group where we get to live out God's plan for our relationships is an exciting thing, and it's central to how we do ministry at Trinity. We also believe that God is calling us to be a church that doesn't just worship in one place on a Sunday morning, but we are going to reach more people effectively if we are able to reach out into our community with multiple worship sites. Last year we began a 3-year plan, and as a part of that plan, we were going to emphasize 2 things. One was reaching the lost, those who are far from God, really being serious about that mission that God has given us to go and make disciples. And also to set up ministry in such a way that it can multiply with healthy multiplying groups, and again, multiple worship sites. Our synod has set the goal of 2,000 new sites by 2017. And Trinity has said we're going to do our part in that. We're going to be a part of that effort across the whole Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and we want to start 4 new sites. So we're at 5 sites by 2017. Now I want to share this number with you, and I want you to remember it. It's 278. It's kind of a crucial number. We'll come back to it in a little bit. But first I want to just very quickly go through some key targets and their results so far that we had for this first year of our strategic plan. One of those targets was to really work on both of our worship styles, so our worship was excellent. We were doing the absolute best job we could with worship so that people would be eager to bring their friends and unchurched relatives and things like that to come with them to church. We've seen God really blessing that. Let me just give you an example. The 5th Sunday in Lent, kind of a nondescript Sunday in March, we had 363 people in our 9:30 service and 330 people at 11 o'clock. God is really blessing. Our worship is growing during those key worship times between 9 and noon on a Sunday morning. Another key target for us was to really focus on the R value and multiplication in our groups. And while we have over 40 small groups, 22 of those are meeting weekly. And we've had 129 new first-time visitors to those groups so far since July 1 this ministry year. Again, God is blessing our efforts in that area. Another key target for us was to recreate and energize our ministry to kids, youth, and families. And so now we have Grace Kids. It doesn't just happen at 9:30, it happens at 11 o'clock too. And that was a pretty significant accomplishment, making ministry happen in both those times. I'm proud to tell you that we have 36% more kids in Grace Kids than we had in Kids Zone, our old kids ministry. That's an exciting thing. We also have great stuff going on with our senior high youth on Sunday nights, by the way, in their worship service. Another target for this year was to relaunch our 11 o'clock service. And in October, we rolled out kids ministry together with our 11 o'clock service. At that point, we were averaging about 232 people in our 11 o'clock service in the sanctuary. So far, since the first of the year, we're averaging 309. We've seen huge growth, and we haven't even done any public mailing or public launch of that service. Finally, we wanted to really take a look at our facility here and initiate a master plan for Kimberly Way. We worked with an architect, the same architect who helped design our present worship center. And there are some things we can do to this building. A new east entrance, improved lobby area where the narthex would have better flow for people. Kids ministry areas that would have better flow so that we could have better security, and a redesigned preschool area. There's lots of great things we could do to make this facility the best facility it could be for ministry. But let's go back to that number, 278. After all the great things that have been going on here at Trinity over this last year, what do you think that number is now? Well, guess what? It's still 278. Because that number represents the number of parking spaces we have here at Kimberly Way. Now, as a part of our master space planning process, we looked at that. Is there any way to increase that number? And the answer really is no. Even if we decided we wanted to build a parking garage, it's doubtful whether we could get permission from the village to do that and from our neighbors. And the cost would be just exorbitant. So, we've really got a problem. We've got a bottleneck in that crucial time period from 9 to noon on a Sunday morning. We're really pretty full. I want to go back to that 3-year plan and talk about one piece of it in more detail. That idea of being 5 sites by 2017. Our plan has been to continue to do both traditional and contemporary worship here at Kimberly Way. But we never intended to multiply sites that would do two styles of worship. It's just too complicated. And so the thought was we would multiply from our contemporary side new contemporary sites, and from our traditional side new traditional sites. I want to say a word about that. We really believe that both of those styles are uniquely and excitingly placed to reach out into our community and reach new people for Jesus. And I think sometimes we think it's the contemporary that's for reaching the lost and traditional for the saved, and that's not really true. Both traditional and contemporary are for the saved, and quite frankly, both of those styles have possibilities for reaching the lost in our community. So the goal has been to keep doing both styles here and then replicate new sites, traditional, some contemporary, off this existing site. But there's that 278 number again. And we're really concerned that that barrier between, again, 9 and noon on a Sunday morning, our parking lot's pretty full, and it's not going to give us the ability to build the kind of momentum we need to reach the new people, to develop new leaders we need to make these multi-sites happen. We're really worried that number will keep us from living out this dream of being a multi-site church that God has placed before us. So here's the new idea we want you to give some thought and prayer to. What if we were to start by separating our traditional and contemporary onto two separate sites? Traditional would stay here at Kimberly Way. Contemporary would go to a new site. This would give us the chance to not only have two contemporary services in that key time period between 9 and noon on Sunday, but to do the same on our traditional side. You know, it's interesting. Our 9:30 service is growing. It's full. Our 8 o'clock service isn't really growing, and it's mainly a time issue there. If we could move our traditional services later in the morning, we'd have a better chance of filling two traditional services as well as two contemporary on Sunday morning at a new site. And that would give us the momentum we would need to be able to replicate new sites from each of those places. So if we were to do that, what would a new contemporary site look like? Well, you know, we don't really know. This is just a picture of a building that's available in our community. There's lots of empty office space that we might be able to either lease long-term or purchase outright. There are a few things we do know about this site. First of all, it'd have to be close to Kimberly Way. If we're going to ask people to move to a new place, a new site for worship, we can't ask them to move too far. Second of all, it'd need to be a beautiful facility, a place people would want to go to for worship. We'd have to make sure we did great kids ministry there, just like we're doing here at Kimberly Way. We'd have to make sure the music would sound great there, that the room would really work well for our contemporary service. And that would, by the way, give us the ability to make sure the room worked well here at Kimberly Way for traditional. And finally, it'd have to have lots of parking so that we could just about overnight double our capacity. So that's the idea. What if we were to become, as soon as we could, two sites, one church, two styles, two sites, both doing our best to feed people with the gospel and to reach out for the lost? So what do you think? I'd ask you to give this some thought and prayer. We're going to have to make a decision about this June as a part of our annual ministry planning process at our congregation meeting. So we're going to have lots of information sessions where you can find out more between now and June. We're going to have lots of opportunities to you give us feedback and help shape the process. But right now I'd ask you to give this some thought, give this some prayer. See what God is telling you. Is this the next big step that God has for our congregation? Thanks for listening.